It's 1963, and a wealthy tractor owner walks into the office of Enzo Ferrari. He's not there to admire the cars, he's there with a problem. His Ferrari keeps breaking down, and he believes he knows how to fix it. But instead of listening, Ferrari dismisses him and tells him to stick to tractors. What he doesn't realize is that this man is Ferruccio Lamborghini, and that one insult doesn't just end the conversation. It starts a rivalry that will change the car industry forever. But to understand how it got there, we need to go back. Ferruccio Lamborghini was born on April 28, 1916, in the small village of Ranazzo di Cento in northern Italy, in the Ferrara province. He came from a farming family. His parents, Antonio and Evelina Lamborghini, worked as viticulturists, basically growing grapes and working the land. He grew up in a simple, rural home, surrounded by fields and farm life. But even as a child, Ferruccio didn't think like a typical farm boy. While most kids around him were focused on agriculture, he was more interested in machines, engines, and how things actually worked. That curiosity pushed him toward technical studies at the Fratelli Taddia Institute near Bologna, where he learned mechanics and engineering basic skills that quietly shaped his entire future. In 1940, his life took a sharp turn when he was drafted into the Italian Royal Air Force during World War II. Instead of becoming a pilot, he worked as a mechanic, stationed on the island of Rhodes. There, he maintained and repaired military vehicles, working on much more complex machines than anything he had seen before. Over time, he became skilled enough to supervise an entire vehicle maintenance unit. This was where his mechanical talent truly sharpened. But the war brought chaos. In 1943, Italy's political situation collapsed after Mussolini was removed and the country switched sides in the war. German forces quickly took control of Italian territories, including Rhodes. In the confusion, Ferruccio avoided capture and tried to survive by returning to civilian life. With time and even permission from German authorities, he opened a small repair workshop just to get by using his mechanical skills. When the war ended in 1945 and British forces took over Rhodes, Ferruccio was briefly arrested on suspicion of collaboration during the occupation. He was held for a short period, then released and finally allowed to return to Italy in 1946, marking a complete reset of his life. Back home, he started fresh. That same year, he married Clelia Monti in Ferrara, in the church of Santa Maria in Vado. A year later, in 1947, they had a son named Tony Noba. Tragedy struck when Clelia died during childbirth. This loss deeply affected him, but eventually, with his personal life slowly stabilizing, Ferruccio returned fully to his passion machines. Post-war Italy was rebuilding, and there was a huge demand for tractors. Instead of ignoring it, Ferruccio saw opportunity. But there was one problem. He had the skills, but not the money. So he turned to his family for help, and his father came through. Using the family farm as collateral for a bank loan, Ferruccio was able to buy thousands of surplus military parts, engines, equipment, and scrap materials that most people saw as useless. But to him, it was the perfect starting point. He began repairing and repurposing leftover military vehicles and engines, turning them into agricultural machines. That was the real turning point. From a farm boy with curiosity, to a war mechanic, to a problem solver in a rebuilding country, Ferruccio Lamborghini was now stepping into the path that would eventually lead him toward building one of the most iconic automotive names in history. Soon, he got his hands on an old Fiat Topolino. Most people would have seen it as junk, something barely worth repairing. But Ferruccio saw potential. Instead of restoring it to normal, he decided to completely rebuild it in his own way. Bit by bit, he transformed that tiny city car into something far more powerful. He upgraded it, modified its structure, and pushed it beyond its original limits. In the end, the small Fiat became a 750 cubic centimeter open-top two-seater that looked and felt much more aggressive than anything its original design suggested. But Ferruccio didn't stop there. In 1948, he took his creation to one of the most brutal road races in Italy, the Mille Miglia. It was a massive challenge, over 1,000 kilometers of demanding roads filled with experienced drivers and serious competition. Entering a self-modified car into that race wasn't just bold, it was risky. For a while, things actually went well. But after covering around 1,100 kilometers, everything fell apart. The car lost control and crashed into a restaurant wall in the town of Fano. Just like that, the race was over. No finish line, no victory, only damage and disappointment. Still, this moment didn't break Ferruccio. If anything, it sharpened his thinking. He realized something important. He could build machines that actually worked in real conditions. He had the skill, the understanding, and the mechanical instinct. After that, his focus began to shift. Post-war Italy was rebuilding fast, and Ferruccio noticed a much bigger opportunity than racing cars. Farmers and workers needed reliable machines more than anything else: tractors, engines, and practical equipment that could support daily life. So he changed direction. Using leftover military equipment and parts from ARAR surplus centers, he started building agricultural machines. His first major design was the Carioca tractor, based on 6-cylinder petrol engines from Morris trucks. But Ferruccio didn't just assemble parts, he improved them. At that time, fuel was expensive in Italy, so he added a clever innovation: a fuel atomizer of his own design. This allowed the tractor to start on petrol and then switch to cheaper diesel once running. That small idea made a huge difference for farmers struggling with rising costs. And this is where everything started to change. The Carioca tractors performed better than expected. Farmers liked them, word spread quickly, and demand started increasing. What began as a small experiment in a garage was now turning into a real business. Seeing this success, Ferruccio took the next big step. He officially founded Lamborghini Trattori and began producing tractors on a larger scale. Without even realizing it, Ferruccio had just taken his first real step toward building a name that would one day become legendary. As Ferruccio Lamborghini's tractor business grew, his life changed completely. He was no longer just a small workshop owner. He had wealth, confidence, and a deep passion for powerful machines in every form. Ferruccio Lamborghini always pushed machines beyond normal limits, demanded performance without compromise, and left his personal mark on everything he touched. As Ferruccio Lamborghini's success grew, so did his lifestyle. The man who once worked with simple tools in a small garage was now living in a completely different world. Ferruccio Lamborghini started earning serious wealth from his tractor business, and with that came something he had never truly experienced before: the freedom to buy almost any car he wanted. And he didn't waste that opportunity. During the 1950s, he began collecting some of the finest cars in Europe. Not small city cars anymore, but high-performance machines. He owned cars like Alfa Romeo and Lancia, both already respected for style and engineering. But his passion kept growing. At one point, he had so many cars that he could drive a different one every day of the week, switching between luxury and performance without repetition. His collection expanded even further. He added a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, known for its gull-wing doors and advanced engineering, a Jaguar E-Type coupe, often considered one of the most beautiful cars ever built, and two Maserati 3500 GT models. Ferruccio didn't just collect cars for display, he drove them, tested them, and analyzed them deeply. He respected the engineers behind these brands, but he always spoke honestly about performance. Speaking about Adolfo Orsi, the owner of Maserati at the time, he said he respected him as a self-made man because he started off poor like Ferruccio himself, but felt his cars were heavy and not fast enough. That mindset defined Ferruccio to respect people, but judge machines strictly. Then came a major turning point. In 1958, Ferruccio went to Maranello, the home of Ferrari, with a clear goal to buy a Ferrari 250 GT designed by Pininfarina. Over time, he didn't stop at one. He owned multiple models, including the Ferrari 250 GT SWB Berlinetta and the Ferrari 250 GT2+2 four-seater. At first, he admired Ferrari's engineering. The cars were fast, powerful, and exciting. But daily use changed his opinion. He felt they were too loud, too rough, and not comfortable enough for long-distance driving. In his view, they were essentially race cars adapted for the road, not true grand touring cars. That gap kept bothering him. Over time, frustration grew. He began noticing mechanical weaknesses, especially in the clutches, which he felt were not durable enough. Every time something went wrong, he had to send the car back to Maranello for repairs. The process itself frustrated him even more. Technicians would take the car away for hours without clear explanation, which felt inefficient and unprofessional to someone running factories himself. He eventually raised these concerns directly with Enzo Ferrari, expecting improvement, but instead, he felt dismissed. That moment marked a shift in his thinking. Instead of stepping back, Ferruccio did something unexpected. He took one of his own Ferrari 250 GT cars and modified it himself. Using his mechanical knowledge, he improved its performance and even made it outperform the original factory version. That changed everything. It proved he wasn't just a customer or businessman. He actually had the technical ability to build better performance machines. And that idea stayed with him. He started questioning the entire philosophy of sports cars. Why should a driver choose between speed and comfort? Why couldn't a car deliver both? In his mind, a perfect grand tourer should combine performance, comfort, smooth handling, and proper interior quality without compromise. And since he already had strong manufacturing resources through Lamborghini Trattori, he realized he had both the skill and the system to build such a car himself. What started as frustration slowly turned into a clear vision. And that vision was no longer about improving someone else's cars. It was about creating his own. Now he wasn't just a customer anymore. He started thinking like a builder. In his mind, a gap clearly existed in the world of sports cars. He felt that Ferrari focused too much on racing performance while ignoring real-world comfort. So he began imagining something different, a true grand touring car that combined high performance with smooth driving, comfort, quality interiors, and easy handling on normal roads. To him, a perfect car should not force a driver to choose between speed and comfort. It should deliver both. At the same time, Ferruccio also thought like a businessman. Since he already had strong manufacturing experience through Lamborghini Trattori, he realized that many of the components used in tractors were durable, reliable, and cost-effective. If similar engineering ideas were applied to high-performance cars, he believed it could not only improve quality, but also significantly increase profits. This combination of frustration, experience, and business thinking slowly pushed him toward a bold idea, building his own sports car company. Ferruccio wasn't just complaining for no reason. He had built tractors, fixed engines, and understood machines better than most people. So in his mind, the solution was simple. If he didn't like the cars on the market, he'd build a better one himself. And he didn't just think about it, he acted. In 1963, Ferruccio Lamborghini officially founded Automobili Lamborghini in Sant'Agata Bolognese, Italy. This wasn't some small experiment. He hired top engineers, invested heavily, and made it clear from day one he wasn't here to compete. He was here to challenge the best, including Ferrari. With his team finally coming together, Ferruccio set himself an aggressive goal: to reveal his first car at the 1963 Turin Auto Show. Not next year, not someday, but just a few months away. Building a completely new car from scratch in that time was the kind of pressure that breaks most companies. And soon, problems began to show. Ferruccio and his engineers clashed, especially over one critical decision: what kind of engine the car should use. And those disagreements slowed everything down. Time was running out, and then reality hit. They didn't even have a working engine ready. Now imagine that situation. A brand new car company about to debut in front of the entire automotive world, and the car doesn't even have an engine. Most people would have canceled the launch. Ferruccio didn't. Instead, he did something unexpected. He filled the engine bay with bricks, just to give the car the proper weight and balance so it would sit low like a real performance machine. Then he made sure of one thing: the hood stayed locked and no one was allowed to open it. It was risky, almost insane. But when the car rolled into the Turin Auto Show, something surprising happened. People didn't notice what was missing, they noticed what was there. The design looked sharp, the stance was perfect, and the car had presence. It looked like a machine that belonged among the best. And just like that, Lamborghini had everyone's attention. That moment changed everything. After the show, the real work began. The car was finally completed the right way, refined and properly engineered, and brought to life as the Lamborghini 350 GT. The Lamborghini 350 GT wasn't just a statement. It was a real success for a brand new company stepping into a competitive industry. When it launched in 1964, sales didn't explode overnight, but that wasn't the goal. Around 13 cars were sold initially, and over the next 2 years, that number grew to roughly 120 units. For an unknown manufacturer competing against established names, this was a strong and promising start. It proved that Lamborghini could build cars people actually wanted to buy, not just admire. But while Ferruccio was focused on refining his vision of a perfect grand tourer, something unexpected was happening inside the company. A small group of ambitious engineers began quietly working on a far more radical idea, something faster, lower, and far more aggressive than anything Lamborghini had planned. Without making it official, they started developing what would become the Lamborghini Miura. This secret project marked a shift in direction, from comfortable grand tourers to something that would redefine performance itself, setting the stage for Lamborghini's future as a true supercar brand. But just as his dream car company was taking off, trouble started creeping into his other empire. But while this vision was forming, his industrial empire started facing serious trouble. In the 1970s, the tractor business, Lamborghini Trattori, suffered a major setback when a South African importer suddenly canceled all orders. At the same time, in Bolivia, a new military government that came into power after a coup canceled a large tractor shipment that was already prepared for export. These two events caused a heavy financial blow. On top of that, the company was unionized, which meant Ferruccio could not easily reduce staff or cut costs. Even when orders dropped, expenses stayed the same, putting enormous pressure on the business. Eventually, in 1972, he made a difficult decision and sold Lamborghini Trattori to a rival company called Same. But problems didn't end there. The entire Lamborghini group started struggling financially, and development in the car division slowed as costs were reduced. Ferruccio then began looking for buyers and entered negotiations with a Swiss businessman, Georges-Henri Rossetti. He sold 51% of the car company for about $600,000, which meant he lost control of the company he had founded. Even though he continued working at the Sant'Agata factory, real control was no longer in his hands. Then the global situation made things worse. The 1973 oil crisis hit the entire automotive industry, and demand for high-performance sports cars dropped sharply as people shifted towards smaller, fuel-efficient vehicles. By 1974, Ferruccio had become completely disillusioned with the car business. He sold his remaining 49% stake in the company, and the shares were later acquired by René Leimer, a close associate of Rossetti. With that, he fully stepped away from the automobile company that bore his name. After leaving the automotive world, Ferruccio didn't stop working entirely. He continued with other businesses, including Lamborghini Calor, his heating and air conditioning company, and later founded Lamborghini Oleodinamica S.p.A., which produced hydraulic equipment in 1969. But eventually, in 1974, he retired from industrial life completely and moved to a large estate called La Fiorita, near Lake Trasimeno in Umbria. There, he returned to a quieter life farming, producing wine, hunting, and even designing his own golf course, while still managing some small business interests in the background. He also had a daughter, Patrizia, at the age of 58. Ferruccio Lamborghini later passed away in 1993 at the age of 76 in Perugia after suffering a heart attack. One of the most interesting parts of his legacy was his connection to bullfighting culture. In 1962, he visited a ranch owned by Don Eduardo Miura and was deeply impressed by the strength and beauty of fighting bulls. As a Taurus himself, he chose the raging bull as the symbol of his future car brand. Once he mentioned, "I visited Eduardo Miura's ranch in Seville, where he raised bulls for bullfighting, and I was so impressed that by the time I got home, I had already selected my future emblem." That's why many of his cars were named after famous bulls or bull-related terms, such as Miura, Islero, Espada, Jarama, Uraco, Countach, Diablo, Murcielago, Gallardo, and others, each carrying a story rooted in Spanish bullfighting tradition. And that symbol, the raging bull, became one of the most powerful identities in the entire automotive world. And that's how the story of Ferruccio Lamborghini ties back to one of the most iconic symbols in automotive history, the raging bull. What started as a farmer's son fixing machines turned into a man who challenged giants, questioned perfection, and unknowingly built a legacy that still dominates headlines decades later. And that bull? It wasn't just branding. It became a media magnet, a global identity, and a warning sign to every competitor that something aggressive, fearless, and unstoppable was born. Now here's the real question. Was Ferruccio Lamborghini the man who reacted to frustration, or the man who turned frustration into a global empire? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more untold stories like this, make sure you're subscribed, because legends like this don't end here.